Have you ever actually sat down and worked out how much it really costs your MSP to win a brand new client? Not what you think it costs, but the true figure once you account for time, effort, marketing, sales, and wasted opportunities. Most MSPs massively underestimate this. And my guest today doesn't guess at this number, he measures it, he sees it across the channel, and he understands exactly what the average MSP is spending to land a single new customer. And I'm going to warn you now, when you hear the real figure, it's going to change how you think about marketing and growth.
Hi, I'm Sean Walsh, and I am the CEO of Encore Strategic.
And thanks so much for being here on the podcast, Sean. You and I met very briefly at ScaleCon at the back end of last year in New Orleans, and we had literally a 5-minute conversation. I could barely get to your booth. You were surrounded, mobbed by MSPs, which was an amazing thing to see at such a great conference. But it's great to have you on the podcast now. And we're going to talk today about a subject that's, well, you and I agree is so difficult for most MSPs to get their heads around. And that is, how much does it actually cost you to win a brand new client? We're going to explore that today, and I know you've got some advice on figuring that out and, of course, trying to adjust that price as well, because it is often a scary figure when MSPs figure it out. Let's first of all just have a look at you. So tell us about you, Sean. What do you do with MSPs right now, and what's your kind of background?
Yeah, so what we do is we do peer groups for MSP owners. We also do COO and service manager groups. And then we also do direct consulting and coaching with MSPs to help them increase profitability, grow market share, and prepare for exit.
And how did you get into doing this? How long have you been doing it for?
So I ran an MSP for many years, and I am the stereotypical, started it up in a spare bedroom in the house, grew to the basement and then out to an office, and we grew it to locations in 4 states in the US. And then we were acquired by a $350 million services company, and private equity backed, and they bought the company. And, I just wasn't good at being retired. So too much stuff going on in my head. And I have always had a passion for teaching. I've taught college, I've taught high school. I work as a dive instructor, as a scuba instructor, as a side hustle. So I love teaching and I love sharing knowledge.
That's really cool. I want to do scuba. That's one of my kind of semi-retirement plans, because like you, I never intend to retire. So yeah, whereabouts are you based in the States?
I am actually here in Aruba right now, where we have an office where we run our peer groups out of Aruba occasionally, and it's a nice, beautiful ocean here. And so anytime you want to come to Aruba and be a guest speaker, we can take you out and get you scuba.
Amazing. Certified. Right. I'm in. My people will talk to your people. We'll make that happen. That sounds really cool. So one of the things, before we get on to talking about the cost of acquisition, the cost of acquiring a client, I would imagine, and I don't do coaching, so I work closely with MSPs, but it's always very much on practical things of improving their marketing and their websites and putting in place a lead generation system. But often the conversations, I notice how much, and I've been doing this for just 10 years with MSPs, but 20 years overall. So like you, I've probably noticed how much MSPs hold themselves back through overthinking things, through emotional things, through worry, through fear. Do you see that? Because you're working with them on all of their business, and obviously you've been there and you've done that, and you've come through the other side and had the successful exit. Do you see that a lot, and is that a lot of the work that you do, working on the kind of the mindset and the emotional stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, we're taking people who are great engineers, but as many of us who come from the engineering background of things, we can sometimes hyperfixate on some of those details, and not often the right ones. And looking at the business more holistically is really one of the key things that we kind of focus on in our coaching and consulting and in our peer groups, and making sure that they're not just working on one leg of the stool, to take an old analogy, but we have to work on the business holistically, and we have to balance out all the aspects of it. And one of the areas is, as you well know, that MSPs suffer in paying attention to, is the sales and marketing side. And it's the one, because it's the one we struggle with the most. Yeah. I mean, it's, technology is black and white. It's easy. You tell a computer to do something, it does exactly what you tell it to do. Sales is not like that. Sales is very fuzzy, and sometimes people aren't comfortable in that. But you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because if you're going to scale your company, you have got to be able to build a sales and marketing team, because in except for some very rare exceptions, owner-led sales is just not going to get you to that big payday on when you want to exit.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I completely agree as well that it's the most difficult thing. It's so far away from the technical skill set. But that's why I've dedicated what is left of my working career. I say that I'm only 51, but I intend to spend the rest of my working career continuing to make marketing easy for MSPs for exactly that reason, because it's the big difficult missing piece in most MSPs businesses. They've got the operations, the customer service, everything is there, except they just don't know how to win clients. And that leads very nicely into our core subject, which is the cost of acquiring a client. So I know that MSPs, the vast majority of MSPs, haven't a clue. Not a clue. I suspect that you have exactly the same experience. And when you ask MSPs to estimate how much they think they've spent to acquire a client, do you often find that they're coming in way under what they've actually spent?
You know what? They're not even able to come up with a number. They really, in most cases, the MSPs really don't think about what they're spending on trying to get sales out. And one of the biggest things MSPs suffer from is what I refer to as random acts of marketing. They spend a bunch of money on one thing, it doesn't work. They say, "Oh, the heck with it." They don't do it anymore for a while, and then they go do something else again. And it's that you really we need that consistency on the sales and marketing. I mean, it's a numbers game, and it's about consistent efforts. And they don't really do that, and then because of the fact they're not doing it regularly, they're not really budgeting for things. But one of the things that we do is we make them break down a budget, a very detailed budget. So now all of a sudden we're getting to see, hey, wait a second, there's a lot of highs and lows here. We need to smooth this out. And then we start calculating it. And in our peer groups, we do a lot of financial accountability. And we finally decided we really needed to not only track the typical financial numbers that most MSPs track, like your service gross margin, your EBITDA, things like that. But we started tracking, how many leads are you getting in? What do those leads cost? How many of those leads go to a first meeting? How many first meetings go to proposal? How many proposals go to close? And what about the salaries of the people who are doing that work? What does that cost you? And whatever marketing you're doing. And we realized it's a very significant amount of money. And honestly, I hadn't really given it much thought since I had sold my company. And I saw an article, and it had the data in it, and it said that the average cost of an MSP client was $32,000 US.
Wow.
And and most people, so one of my questions is, how much do you think it costs you to get a new client? And and I checked the data, and it was solid. And and I think the range I'm seeing right now is about 28,000 to 32,000 to get a new client, and people have no idea that it's that high.
And take that client at 28 to 32. What kind of lifetime revenue would you expect from a client like that?
Right, and that's one of the other things we're calculating now, is what's the lifetime value of the client, and it's typically 3 to 5 years. In some cases, if you're really good, you might get longer, but that's the average. 3 to 5 is what you're going to get. So, I mean, that's a pretty heavy cost, and especially if you want to be bringing on about 2 new clients a month, which is what most MSPs are shooting for. So that's $64,000 a month in client acquisition costs. That's a salary every month. So you better make sure you're doing it correctly, and you better make sure, just like all our other numbers, we spend so much time monitoring service metrics, and let's bring down our average time per endpoint. Hey, our average time per endpoint went from 40 minutes to 32 minutes. Yay. But nobody's going, hey, we got our client acquisition cost down from $32,000 a client down to, $24,000. Yay. So we really need to be monitoring that. And the thing that I'm seeing is that as we're monitoring this with our coaching clients and our peer groups now, people are taking it a lot more seriously than they did before. Before it was kind of like, oh, sales, that's not me, I'm going to push that aside. Now they're like, hey, wait a second, this is costing me real money, and I want to grow my company, so let's pay attention to this. So that's a good thing. obviously people paying more attention to where their money's going and their efforts. That's good stuff. And but you need to dial that in. One of the things that we did with some of our groups recently is we had everybody read Alex Hormozi's book, $100 Million Leads. And I really like that book because he does a great job of breaking this whole concept of client acquisition cost and lifetime value down to some very, very simple metrics. And he breaks the whole process of acquiring leads down into some very simple terms that even non-sales professionals are able to completely understand and embrace. And we had a really good response with the groups on that. And I think we're already starting to see the benefits of people paying attention to those numbers.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And if you loved that book, then you have to read his newish book, which came out at the back end of last year. It was sort of September, October last year, 100 Million Money Models, which is, in my opinion, is the best of the three books he's written. There's $100 million leads, $100 million offers, and the Money Models one is almost about how to make more money out of the clients you get. So it doesn't solve the problem. Well, he's already solved the problems of how to acquire the clients and how to put the offers together. But the Money Models book just absolutely blew my mind. And I think he or whoever's doing his writing with him has matured enough that they're able to explain very complicated concepts so simply. They're great books, and everything Alex Hormozi does on YouTube and everything written is absolutely worth looking at. Sean, sorry, go on.
I had to laugh when I was first introduced to his stuff, and I thought, who's this gym rat that I'm going to listen to?
Exactly that.
You check his background. He actually really does have the business chops to back up what he's saying.
Oh, he does. He does.
He certainly had the success, but you hit it right on the head. I mean, he does a very good job of taking very complex stuff and really boiling it down to its essence.
Yeah, and we had Nate Friedman on the podcast, I forget when it was, a few months ago, of Tech Pro Marketing and MSP sites. And he's part of Alex Hormozi's program. And I can't remember how much he spent to be part of it. But it was $1 million. It wasn't quite that much, but it was a huge amount of money. And I sat with Nate at ScaleCon, which is where you and I first met last year. And he said he was going to do it again because it puts so much value within his business. So yeah, Alex, there we go. That's the big takeaway from this. Is Alex Hormozi. I think we talk about him every 3 weeks on the podcast. There we go. Sean, let's wrap this up. So, client acquisition cost of up to $32,000, terrifying. Lifetime value, you're only going to keep them for 3 to 5 years on average, terrifying. And if you were to look at that and you were a new MSP in the marketplace, you'd almost throw your hands up and say, "Oh, what's the point?" I'm on a loser to get started. So, what's your what kind of advice now are you giving to the MSPs that you're working with on either reducing down that client acquisition cost or mitigating the cost by extending the client and making sure that guaranteeing that they stay 7 to 10 years rather than that 3 to 5 years?
Well, two things. Number one, read Alex's books up front. Don't wait for the last thing that you do in your company is to build a sales team like I did. You want to be consistent. You don't have to go out and do grandiose things in your marketing and your sales. You just have to do a few things consistently. You're going to get much better results. You're going to drive down that client acquisition cost and monitor the cost, because what gets monitored, gets managed. So we want to do that. The other thing, my self-serving plug here, go out and get my book, the Pumpkin Plan for Managed Service Providers, and use those lessons to make sure that you maximize the value and profit you get from your MSP clients so that you're not spending a lot of money to get what we like to refer to as a cheap pain in the ass client. And you actually get the client that you're going to make money with and the one that's going to stick with you and is going to be aligned with your core values and value what you do.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So thank you. So that book again, The Pumpkin Plan for MSPs, for Managed Service Providers. And in terms of your peer groups and everything else, if we want to hang out with you in Aruba, maybe do some scuba diving on the side, how do we find out about those peer groups and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Sean at encorestrategic.io, SHAWN. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I am very active on there and on there regularly. So feel free to reach out to me on social media anytime.
For MSPs around the world, the MSP Marketing Podcast with Paul Green.